Did you guys all get a notice that it's recording?
Not yet.
Not yet, and
But
There we go.
there it just popped up.
all right, that's how slow it is. Okay.
Got it.
Should be good. All right, I will try. I really hope I'm on the whole time. All right, guys, take it away, Mike.
Okay, I'm gonna. Are you seeing my share screen now?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Clears that. Tried some different stuff here.
How'd you get your video to show up in the presentation?
I like that.
That's
Mike. Very
That's
nice.
cool.
That's a
That is
trick.
sharp. That's the first
like-
time I've ever seen somebody do
Yeah,
that.
it's like
Yeah, that's a
he's
new
some
feature of
fancy
Teams
guy
now.
here.
Yeah,
No,
a
it's
new
not
Teams
Teams.
feature.
It's actually a mashup.
Oh, okay, because they're going to build it into Teams that way.
Yeah, well, Microsoft has taken too long for me, so I kind of like
Oh,
to
okay.
shortcut.
So you mashed.
Well, there's actually several different ways to do that into PowerPoint. So in PowerPoint, you can insert media into PowerPoint, and then you can write a driver to stream your video. You can also do this with OBS. In this particular case, I'm using a Teams meeting. A Zoom meeting, where I'm sharing my desktop and my video, so that with the Zoom meeting, it gives me a window that I can then resize to whatever size I want.
Oh, so clever. I got it.
Yeah.
Nice. And you just
Yeah,
stick it
that's
over your
definitely what I would
presentation.
call a mashup. That's a mashup.
Yeah,
Zoom.
so
That's a
inside
great
of a
one,
team.
though.
Very nice.
Yeah.
So-
OBS, it would be the way I would do it. That's how I do live.
yeah, so
you-
it was just OBS and then the Teams and then all that. Then I had to like do the OBS control, then manage that and do the transitions and stuff. So do a lot of OBS for some of the other presentations I do. This one I just started Teams meeting. A Zoom meeting with just myself, and then I share my desktop, and then now in Teams, I also share the same desktop, so it gives a mashup of both of them together, and allows me to do that. So quick plug for Synix and Stellar. Synix is so I work at Synix, Mike Morrison, Azure Solutions Architect at Synix.com. Synix is an industry leader in IT distribution. The division I work in, Stellar, provides, the official thing is a one-of-a-kind digital transformation ecosystem, providing end-to-end solutions involving everything from software, hardware to connectivity, which means if it's Microsoft hardware, software, or you need it connected to the internet, we can help you. We've got a bunch of other software services, hardware vendors, etc., that all fall under the Stellar brand. My specific role is a consultant / advisor on a lot of the aspects of Microsoft Azure and the Power Platform, and to some degree also Microsoft Dynamics. So Stellar team provides channel partners, value-added products and services, etc., that helps them, gives them access to trusted advisors, me, solutions aggregators, T-Mobile, Verizon, etc., and a whole bunch of different growth accelerators. So we also have bundled solutions, so to speak, so you can combine all kinds of stuff to get whatever you need for your business. Okay, that aside, Azure Lab Services lets you create labs with the infrastructure managed by Azure. Currently, a classroom lab is the only type supported officially from Microsoft. I don't know what other types of labs they'll be offering or what context that means, but on the Microsoft documentation, they say classroom labs are the only type that are currently supported. They may have things that are more along the lines of like Azure Lab Services labs. So don't know yet, but that aside, it's just one of the things I thought I'd mention. Azure Lab Service handles all the infrastructure management via a SaaS front end for each managed lab type and classroom lab types, or what we have now. This includes spinning up VMs to handling errors and scaling out the solution to any number of users. So after an Azure administrator creates a lab account, and then designates who the instructors and lab creators are, those lab creators, instructors, educators, whatever, then have a SaaS platform to set up a lab, specify who's going to access it, and designate the type of VM that they're going to push out. And then once they've got that, they add the users to the class, and then the attendees or the students of the lab then receive an email where they just click on the link and they get into their virtual machine. Let's move this out of this side here. So Azure Labs addresses cases where students aren't, addresses the cases where students aren't allowed into classrooms like we see now in some of the states still. It also, because it enables you to push your lab environment into the cloud, it eliminates the typical on-premise issues that an organization may encounter. So some of these are, problems with theft, with fire, other security issues. It's expensive equipment, monitors, PCs, servers, etc. Access controls to that, right? And staffing someone to manage the lab, maintain the lab, or just be physically in the lab when people are coming in and out. It allows end users, customers to avoid capital expense of purchasing lab machines. And then they may sit dormant for, 8 to 16 hours typically on a day, right? So I'm a K through 12. I have a computer lab. Unless I go through all the VM secure access from remotely to get them into it through VPN, etc., which also adds issues and stuff. No one could access them after hours. So with Azure Labs, the machines are available for each individual for 24 hours whenever they need it. So Azure Labs provides immediate access to VMs for invited users. They do not need access to the Azure subscription. So it's an overlay on the Azure subscription, kind of like a Windows Virtual Desktop, right? Windows Virtual Desktop, a user has an account in Office 365, Microsoft 365, and they just access that virtual machine from whatever system they're on. The Azure Virtual Labs provides custom templates. There's actually hundreds of predefined custom templates that are available in the system, and I'll show you some of that. So I can click a button, deploy various types of Linux machines, Windows servers with SQL Server and Visual Studio pre-installed. I can create my own templates based off an existing template. So whatever other software stack I need, I can push out. I can schedule the labs or the lab machines to only be available at certain times of the day. So I don't want them accessing unless, I'm available to help with whatever. I can, like I said before, I can scale this out to hundreds of virtual machines with just a few clicks. And the service is managing the Azure SaaS service for Virtual Labs, manages all that infrastructure behind it. So Azure Labs, so it's kind of a screenshot of some desktops some users see. Azure Labs have a simple user interface experience. Let's go on next one. Neither instructors or the users, again, need to have an Azure subscription. All they need is a browser on any device and a Microsoft account, like an Xbox or would be an example of Microsoft account, or something else that's authenticated through Active Directory. So again, if you have users that are out in the wild, you can add them to your Active Directory. You can do a AD B2C and add them there, or you could just have them do like set up an Xbox account without having to pay for Xbox. They can set up register their private email through Microsoft. That gives them a Microsoft account, which would in turn be suitable enough to get into marry into the Active Directory on your tenant. Has cost optimization and tracking built in, so it allows you to manage your budget. You can schedule designated usage times, as this chart showing. Has automatic management and scaling, and allows you to pay for just what you need with no upfront cost. So again, I can provision a virtual machine lab for 10 users or 100 users with just a couple clicks. And this is as an educator, right? Not as someone that's an administrator on the Azure side. The teachers, the lab presenters, they get a web interface that allows them to say, I want a machine of X, push this out to whoever these users are that I want to have access to. So the way you get started, and I'll be going over some more of this later, is you go to labs.azure.com. So if I go to labs.azure.com in here, here we go here. Go to labs.azure.com. It's loading up. So this is kind of what you'd see. It found me anyways. Good dang it. Sign out. Yeah, we'll do this one. Let's see if this knows it. Okay. That is still an account with this. Sorry, I've been playing around too much with too many different accounts, and they've all seemed to be tied into it. Back to my presentation. So when you go into it, it basically prompts you to say, oh, I can't, do you have a link? Because we don't see you associated with any link. And if you don't have a link, then there's a click button at the bottom, 1, 2, 3 step. And move this picture out of the way. Get an Azure subscription. So you need an Azure subscription. Once you have an Azure subscription, then you can add a lab account. So 1 and 2 is the administrator duties, right? So you need to have the Azure subscription. You need to be able to get in there and deploy some services, which gets you into the adding the lab account. Once the lab account is created, then you can designate who's allowed to be lab creators, who's the educators, who's the teachers, teaching my classroom, college, K through 12, etc. Okay, I'll put some links out to that. So labs.azure.com, and any Bing or Google search for Azure Lab Services will take you to all the steps on here's what to do. So it basically walks you through all the steps, and I'm not going to go over too much on details on that, but it says, go to my homepage, log into Azure, deploy a service, look for lab services, and then it'll walk you through that. Maybe keep a separate window open as you're deploying that, so you can see some of the context of it. Not too much involved. It's fairly simple. Let's go see what it's doing. So, except for the 3 caveats. Yeah, that's where we are now. So 3 caveats. One is, move this thing out of the way here. Enable location services. So put my laser pointer on. So this enable location services selection here is, if you click the button, what happens is the VMs will deploy. The VMs, all the end users, the students log into, they spin up in the Azure cloud, but not really in your tenant. They're sort of in this free, open, worldwide space. So what happens is the VMs for the students, if you want to call them that, will spin up in a region closest to them, rather than the region that the resource groups just deployed into. So this particular Azure Lab account that I have here was deployed into East US. Now, I can log in as a student into that lab from West US, and I'll get a virtual machine that's running in West US. It'll still talk to it. So it's a choice. Probably a little more efficient to have a VM that's closer to the user rather than the lab. Again, these are sort of isolated and mostly isolated and freestanding virtual machines that are built to your Azure account, but are sort of self-contained. However, there's another thing about this. A second caveat is you can peer the machines inside of a lab classroom account. So I have 10 students. They're all taking my computer science class, and I want them to be able to network and exchange data between each other from each of their virtual machines. I can peer that network. Okay? So that's a more advanced thing, and can maybe show some of that later if it's critical. I'm not sure. But best case is when you're deploying a lab account is if you think you have that, think about the enable location selection first, because that's going to put the machines either in the deployment staging area of the lab, or it's going to allow the virtual machines to run in a region that's closest to them. And there's, 20 or 30 different Azure regions where the lab services can be deployed. And it checks, it looks at the region of the user logging in and where are they, puts the virtual machine in their space rather than your deployment tenant. The other thing is the networking should be configured before you do this. So before you create a lab account, if you want to peer them, this is what I think is the best policy based on what I've been doing, is create a resource group in Azure, put in a virtual network for that resource group, and then deploy the lab account into it, and that should take care of it. As I mentioned this a second ago, a number of regions in the Azure sphere worldwide. We have all the US regions here listed for United States. These are commercial regions. There is no Azure Labs right now in the entire US Gov tenant space, nor is there any in the three Germany tenants and in China. So those may come, they may not come. I don't know about the government stuff at all. So not a problem for me. I support all my customers generally are in the US, a few outliers. So something to think about. So when you go to Azure Lab Services, search for it on Bing, search for it on Google. The instructions are all there. It's easy enough to find. Has the instructions on how to walk through all the steps to deploy a lab service into a tenant. It also has the steps the instructor would take, right? So, you deploy the services, you have lab instructors, teachers pushing off computer labs, different people. They need to know what to do, right? So you can train them, you can give them this lab as like, oh, here's what you do, all of that's from simple search. Azure Lab Services takes you to all the documentation that's available. Okay, I'm going to take a hard break on that. I'm going to kill this because I have a little bit of a problem with in slideshow. There we go.
Hey, Mike, since we're on
Yes,
a
sir.
little of a break, I texted a question into the chat, but you might not be looking at it. It's just I'm wondering about costs. How do they figure all that out?
So there's some base level costs in an Azure tenant. Let's see if I can get into it. I go to my resource groups. This one here. This is the first one I was doing. I walked through this with another customer. Shared image gallery. I have a few shared image galleries. So there's some basic storage costs for that. These are So I have templates available in the whole Azure sphere, marketplace images, right? And they have pre-deployed stacks. And I've taken one of those pre-deployed stacks and I created a lab with that. And then I saved it locally. So I'll go into the lab and I'll configure it how I want to install the software as the lab creator, right? The teacher, right? I'll create a lab, make sure it's got the whole software stack that I want to teach is there and anything else I want to do. And then I save it as my own image, right? So these are then stored in my account and I'll get some charges on that. But it is very, very low. Let me see if I can get to cost on that. Cost management, billing. I got a bigger slide, so I didn't want to do a big old slideshow with all this stuff. Cost analysis, I'll go in through here. So the pricing for that piece is the storage of the local stuff, but what you get really charged for is the runtime on the virtual machines. So let me just go to Data Link Networks. So it's going to give me a projection of where I am, where I'm looking for by the end of the month, right? So I'm doing a whole bunch in here, right? So all the costs in general is in there. So it projects what it's going to be. If I look at, let's look at this one here. So this is a higher end one. Hang on. I've got, so this is what the students see. I mean, sorry, the educators see, right? So now we're in the educator view or the instructor view or however you want to call it. Out of the way. So I've created a lab and here's my dashboard. I got 4 users that are going to have 14 hours each for a total of 82 hours combined. You know, each is 14, but I got 4, so figure that part out. It's going to cost me $16.40 for the month, right? Or well, for the time, the duration of this lab. So if we go to
Very, very good. That's 4 users, 16 bucks, $4 a month for a lab. That's pretty darn good.
right, so if I go into new lab, so we'll go to sorry, Azure's been a little bit finicky lately, right? So we'll go to NRV. I'm going to create a lab called NRV, and I'm going to deploy a template, right? So this Vex Code V5, that's one I've already deployed. So that's saved in my template gallery, my local gallery in Azure. So I'll see that. I'll see some of these others. I forget what it has. So I can pick out what kind of operating system I want. And then if I go into Azure, hang on, it's going to take me back into Azure from here. Oh, come on. Azure's still being a little bit weird. Jump through here. Hopefully we can see it. We had a little problem with Azure lately, and it still hasn't caught up on this tenant, I think. Although it was there earlier. Let's see if I can just reload it. Yeah, it's fine now. It's doing this weird disconnect right now. I don't know if anyone else has noticed that in the last couple of days, but anyway, so if I look, I've got literally hundreds and hundreds of marketplace images. I don't know why anyone would want CentOS 6.87173. Older stuff. So they're all there, right? Just literally hundreds of them. I have no idea the count. But one of the things is, hang on, let me just stop here. You'll see it's either enabled or it's not, and it needs review and it's not accepted. So if you see something like that, you want it, you just click on it. You got to look at the terms of use. You have to click and look at the privacy policy. So it opens up a new window. Open up a new window. So now I'm accepting those. VMware privacy policy. Come back here and I click enable and I save it. Now this I'm doing as an Azure administrator. So the instructors may or may not have the access rights to do that. They may have to talk to an Azure administrator. And once again, it's role-based access controls, standard to Azure. So you can allow the instructors to do this or not. So you can, as an Azure tenant owner, you can say, I just have these type of images that are pushed off, or I can let the instructors decide what they want, or they can just tell me, then I can go back and configure that for them. So as an instructor, these are all the machine types that have been pre-approved that I'll see. And when I come back to just the enabled only, yeah, I got a whole bunch more enabled that I'm not seeing, right? So terms accept. So these are some of the ones where I got terms accepted. So I'll come in, I'll just pick a machine. Let's see, we'll do this one here. So we'll just fast forward through there. So this is running the VEX Code V5 blocks, right? It's a program, it's a free program for teaching like kids and stuff how to program by moving blocks around and connecting the blocks and then putting some script in there for timing the blocks and etc. Then I decide the machine type. We've got a few types of machine types right now. 2 cores, I'm not sure if that'd be advisable or not. I'm used to a lot more cores and a lot more RAM than 3.5 gigs of RAM. I can do medium, I can do medium nested, I could do GPU intensive, our for compute, our visualization, all again based on the CPU type that's running in the background on these. I can do large machines, 8 cores, 16 gigs RAM. I could do 12 cores. Of course, it's going to cost me $4 an hour with 112 gigs of RAM. So if I spin that up and I want to say, yeah, I'm going to install the GPU drivers, right? So I've named a lab. So in my environment here, I've got a number of labs. So I'm looking at the teacher's interface, right? So I've got all these different types of machines. I'm making a new one of these cards that then from a student's view, if they're invited, they'll see it like that. So I got, under this account I'm logged into, my Gmail account, I got invited for 2 labs from this instructor. This instructor has 4 labs that's under their control. We're about to make a new one called NRV with a pre-deployed or image, a local image with VEX code installed. Consider it like, you know, it could be Visual Studio, it could be SQL Server, it could be Oracle, it could be whatever application you want to put off or whatever application stack you want to put off. Then I'm going to select a location. So maybe I want to have the students have the lab run out of the UK, right? And again, when I was mentioning earlier about location selection, yes or no, this is where this would be critical. So if I put it up in the UK and I selected that to be location locked, then all the users would access this from the UK. They wouldn't have a virtual machine type running in the region closest to them. Okay, so I say next, and I'm going to just do a default username. So we'll call it NRV and do some password stuff. I'm just going to type some junk. Okay, uppercase, special characters, blah, blah, blah. Use the same password for all machines. If I turn that off and I invite a student to the lab, you know, joe@gmail.com, nancy@yahoo.com, Tommy at myactivedirectorydomain.com, whatever that will be, they'll get an email, and then the password, their username is that account, and the password then is under their control. So as a lab administrator, I don't have to worry about the person forgetting their password, right? So problem taken care of. I click next, and then I say how many hours is outside the schedule event. So this is like, this is what I'm saying, how many hours do I want everyone to use it? So I'm gonna do 250. I'll do 25 hours. If they don't access the machine, I want it to be, let's do 59. I want it to go, I want to turn off, right? So this is a very high-end machine. It's costing me $5 an hour because it's, I forget what, 116 gigs of RAM and 16 cores, right? It's a big, big machine. If they go idle, I want them to do, let's say, maybe they take a break for 30 minutes and that's it. If they shut it down, I can select that off and on. This is where they log into the desktop and they say shut the machine down, 59, and then 15 and finish. And then it starts. And it takes about 20, 30 minutes before the machine is deployed. So it's going. It's like watching paint dry. When we're done, come on. Come back to here. Oh, something went wrong. Data link networks. Come back here. When we're done, we get back and there'll be a tab for it in here. So it's right here, whatever. Let's see if this is going. It's probably not going to be live. Nah, it's still going. So we'll just go back to this one. It's already predefined. So 20 minutes for this. When I publish it out to the students, it's also another 20 minutes or so to go through that. Apologize for all these errors. Is Azure stuff that's been doing and going. Okay, so we go back here. Do a reload on this. See if it comes back right. It doesn't. Come back to here. Let's try another one. Student lab.
Yet another woe with doing live demos.
Well, no, yesterday was a really bad day. And then everything this morning was like, oh, it's there for now. Then sometimes it goes away. Okay, so we're good.
Oh yeah,
we're good.
yeah, we had lots of issues from that too.
Yeah, so now I created the lab. So I went through, you saw me, I created a lab. I gave a default username, password, probably not best. Let someone use an account, but you know, you could do it without that. Define the machine type. You pick the type of virtual machine that is going to be part of the lab. I haven't invited any students yet, right? So now I have my dashboards, and I know that based on the type of machine type, this one is, it's a lower end machine. I've got 100 hours for 3 hours for 3 users, so 300 hours total is going to cost me $60. So 100 hours may be enough to go through computer labs with the students for the whole classroom for a quarter, you know, 3 months. I don't know. But the cost in billing is pretty straightforward when you go through and you see exactly what it's going to cost as you deploy. It's going to show you exactly of that machine type, how much it costs per hour. And then as you're saying, if that's what I want, you figure that times the number of hours it's going to be deployed, times the number of students, and you can do the math in your head. And if you get it wrong, the dashboard tells you what the total is. So instructors created a lab of a certain machine type. In this one, it's running Windows 10 Pro. It's got 2 cores, 4 gigs of RAM. It's costing 20 cents an hour. I can change the name of it to whatever I want, and I can add a description. And the students, when they get the email to subscribe to it, they will see this information, whatever you type in. Hello, let's just say hello. Whatever you want to put in, et cetera, et cetera. Then we go to the virtual machine pool. So this is, again, is the instructors and stuff. So I got a dashboard, I have the template, I have a virtual machine pool. I can see that a user is running. That's this account here. That machine is running for me. So I can see that this user, Mike Morrison, is running. Well, if I want to connect to it, I want to connect to it. Is running, and the other users have not been assigned, right? So I created 3 labs, but I didn't assign any users, right? So now I go to users, so I can use these users here. I could add users, so I can upload a CSV file of the user's emails, or I could add them by email. So I'll just do at gmail.com, and I click add, and they get an email saying, hey, you've been invited to a lab. And it'll stage their name in here. I've already got myself in here a few times and some other stuff. So now the instructor sees that they're in here. And if I want to, and I haven't done the schedules and now they're not working, I can look at my settings. So if my settings aren't right for each individual lab, all of these values are at the most 59 minutes. So I can put it down to 0, I think. Yeah, 0. Or I can, well, unless it goes to a default. Yeah, default is 15 for the tenant. Up to 59 minutes. Anything after that, the machine does turn off. So kind of protects environment from having someone leave a virtual machine on, walk away, and then come back, you know, the next morning after 15, 16 hours, and you're still getting billed for it. So that people walk away, they can just walk away and it stops the billing. They can shut it down. We can schedule, you know, mess with this however you want within the range of, you know, 15 to 59 minutes. So we go to the template, and this is where it's going to get interesting. It's where I'm not going to show this because I'll go to a different. I can connect to the template as an instructor, and it gives me an RDP file that I then open up. And once I connect to it, that's when I configure any other software stack I need. I may want to put something on the desktop, like a shared group of files with the lab instructions, any other links they want. If I want to have them actually install a software package beyond this as part of the lab, I can put a drive with the link on the desktop, so it's real clear. Oh, when you log in, there's a desktop link with a shortcut to a directory. Click through that, and there's all the software you need to install. And here's the instructions on what to do when you're going through each of them. So it's all self-contained inside the lab. So plenty to do on that. I'm not going to go through that because it takes a bit to actually do things. I can stop the template, or I can start the template. This is currently now running. I can reset the master password. So when we deploy the machine, we reset the master password. If I want to reset it, I can come here, the standard user is template user. I can set the password to whatever. It will log everyone out. And then they have to log in with the new password. So after as an instructor, I've got a virtual machine type. The template now runs, and you get charged for that too, but it's a different charge. It's not the student's charge, but you still get charged for that runtime. The instructor goes and makes sure the whole thing looks right by logging into the virtual machine. And they're done. They stop it. They come back here and they publish it. So if I publish it, it will go out and replace everyone's virtual machine. So let's say you wanted to, you notice there was a problem. I need to fix something, right? And everyone else is already going. It's going to push out a new image, right? So they're going to start over with a new image. So probably good to check all that, make sure it's good to go before you publish it. So I can publish it out, and that's what then goes out to all the users, right? So then you send them the links, you add them in there. So do the template first, make sure it's all good, add the users and the other pane here, and then come back and publish it. If you've done a lot of work, like let's say you've got a lab that you're going to teach this quarter, next quarter, or you're doing training for corporate users on some software package, and you know as an ISV you have a new application that you want to train users on, and you're going to be doing it, you know, once a week for the next 5 months as you travel around the country and you're teaching people how to use this software or holding, you know, training instances, right? You configure the master image, that's the template, and then you export it to your shared gallery. And again, it takes almost an hour. You give it the special name you want, and you export it out to your shared gallery. And now that's available in your Azure network in your shared image gallery. And will be available for a drop-down pickup when you deploy a new lab. So you do a lab now for Classroom A or training session X, right? I've got 20 users. I'm teaching them how to use my software. I'm giving them virtual machines with everything pre-configured so they don't have to go through all those machinations of figuring out what I did wrong to install it. You just want it installed so they can use it as if they had it installed in their environment. You train them for a week. You know, next week you just start a new lab for a new set of users with some new usernames that you send the invites out to, and you're done. Okay, so let's go. I covered all that. So now I am going to connect to this virtual machine. I can do two things here. So now I'm in as a student. So I'll make this a little bigger here. So the student got an email and it says, hey, here's the link. This is Microsoft Azure, and you're invited to the link, Computer Science Essentials. That's the full name for this one right here, East US, right? So it's deployed to East US. Our graphics lab, FFF. So I get an email that says I'm connected. There's a link. I click on the link and it takes me to this page. So from this page, I'm on a Windows machine. I can download the RDP file and connect to that, or I can click on these little ellipses, and it's a little bit odd. Hang on. And if I copy that, that's the actual RDP link. So the RDP file that I download would have that same link. In this case, I'm going to use Chrome RDP. So I'm on Windows, but I'm running Chrome RDP. So this is a Google application. So Google has Chrome RDP is a client software. It allows someone to share out their, well, you can do it on Windows too, but mostly if you got a Chrome desktop or a Chrome box, which is one of the machines I have here somewhere, I can share my desktop out. In this case, we're gonna access a Windows machine through RDP, through the Google Chrome app, RDP app. And this is because I had to test it for education, right? And Cynics.com, we have a Google practice as well. We sell, our reseller customers sell thousands and thousands and hundreds of thousands of Chrome devices, right, for students. So we want to have teachers present computer science labs. And then the schools all gave people Chrome RDP, they gave them Surface books too, right? Or Surface laptops, right? Whatever, rather than a full-size computer, so they could do their schoolwork from home. So we needed to be able to make sure that we could do Chrome books as well. So I paste in my address that I copied off of my link. So again, this is a browser. I'm a student. I connect to this is the lab I want to connect to. I would prefer if they had this a little more clear, but it's right there for now. Again, this is new software from Microsoft, so they still have to work on some stuff. So students are at home on Chromebooks. They're in K through 12, and you're teaching them how to do computer science stuff or whatever. So we copy that and we connect. And I need to enter the password. Again, this is a master password, not an individual password. That's why it's not tied to any of my Microsoft accounts or anything. And we come up. Oh, it's tied to my Gmail account. Okay, good. So that's my Microsoft Gmail icon for Xbox gaming. So I do some Xbox gaming on the side. So that's my in-player avatar, right? So it's showing that. So again, this is not a corporate account. The only thing is I had a Gmail account that I tied to Microsoft Xbox. So I could play my Xbox, right? But it's tied to Active Directory. And that's the one fundamental thing is it needs to be tied to Active Directory. And it's super easy to figure that out. I won't go into that if someone doesn't have that. And I've got some stuff set to automatically start. So the VEX code will start. So I do startup. Yeah, hang on. It's going. I forgot what the control is, but so basically it's when the machine starts, a certain number of applications will start, and the VEX code will automatically start. It's just taking a minute. I think this is the 2 core machines. No, I don't want to do that. Yeah, there's my instructions for it. So that's essentially it. This program takes a minute to load up. It's on a very low end machine. This is the first one I ever did. And then it gives a simple interface, right? So I can do RDP through that. I can do Chromebook. I got the standard RDP access to it. So it's as simple as that. So I guess I'll look through, see if I have any questions. Let's go back to the instructor lab. Yeah, something went wrong. Fantastic. Oh, another thing is interesting is I did this once in one Azure tenant, but I can also make sub labs too. So I did this one earlier today, or this is an empty one. So let's say I have, maybe I have an Azure tenant for a bunch of different user groups, right? I can segregate these out so that one group of instructors and students, maybe K through 8 are over in their own lab, and then the high school lab is separated, but I can manage all of them through one interface. And I have no labs, so I can, it's giving me issues. This one's good. So I can do multiple labs. I can segregate, and then in each lab, I get a type of all the different machine types I can deploy. I configure them out. I work on my master image. I publish it to a lab, and then I invite the users. They get a link, and they just RDP into it.
Excuse me, I had a question. Can the creation of the actual labs, not the templates, can that be done like programmatically? So like say I had a desktop application and I wanted to be able to let a user do a demo, and it's one of those applications where they need to have 3 or 4 people using it at the same time to see the benefit. But it's not a web app, so I'd like to pre-install the application on the template, and then if they sign up on a web page that they want to do a demo, then it can spin up. Is there a way that I could programmatically spin up the instances of that template and then send and generate the links?
That I don't know. It's possible. I haven't looked into anything like that. I know what you're saying is, believe it, most of it's probably pushed off by templates, right? And most Azure stuff is templates. So you could look at the template, and it's generating the template for it now. So you should be able to, right? I don't know. I haven't hit that. I've been doing this, so I only found out about this application like 2.5 weeks ago, right? And I already done a number of these, and already, had questions from users, and like, what about this and what about that? So I'm kind of like, well, I'm kind of trying to figure it all out. So I have the ability, because I can use an ARM template to deploy something in Azure, right? I could take this template and programmatically create the lab, and then it would get to this point where there's a lab that someone could see. I do not know about the inviting the users part. I mean, that's something that may be possible. I don't know.
Okay, I just sort of Googled around and found on their reference, they have some kind of REST API that looks like you can create labs directly from. So I'm assuming if you can do that, then you could probably specify the name or something and then figure out from that what you would need to send as a link, or there's probably something to get a link that's from one that's been created. But it looks like there's a REST API that'll let you do pretty much everything.
Okay, REST API probably calls into something like doing a template or whatever. Yeah, I just don't, I honestly don't know. So I haven't even hit that yet. That's a great question. It really is a great question. I know people like to say there's no, that's always a great question, but no, that is a good question. So right now I've been working with, and I've had issues with, what was it? The most recent thing was peered network. So a group wants to have a peered network and then have network attached storage so they can map a local drive to their account. So you could do that with OneDrive, but they're wanting to do something so that there's a file share stored that everyone could access, right? Not an independent thing, where it appears as a mapped drive, no matter who's logged onto the machine. So I think peer, so that's what I was working with, well, trying to do it yesterday with the peer networking, then map a drive for everyone that logs into the machine. Then again, Azure problems yesterday, still trying to catch up on it. There's a lot of different unique cases on it.
That would be a good use for Azure Files.
Well, and
if
that's,
you could set the security properly, because Azure Files is a URL address that's drive mappable, and you wouldn't have to have a local server. You would just have to have the right security to get to it, and that might be tricky.
well, and this is the thing is, and this is exactly what I was trying to do was Azure Files, so I can map it to a local drive, like a CIF shared would be, right? But it's all in Azure, and then the peered network means it's all on the same virtual network, just like it was on a local thing. And then I was looking at, do I need to have, because the users log in with this outside context, if I have them as a guest account in the AD, then is that sufficient, right? And then so there's a whole bunch of properties and stuff, and so it's
Yeah, I don't even know if you could actually do that with Azure Files because of the security layer.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, and and I was like playing with what was the other one? Oh, like in WV they have FS Logic, which auto mounts drives for a user based on who they are, right? Can that work, right? I don't know.
Well, it could. I just think the security to figure out how this unknown person can access it without having groups and stuff like that associated, that if you're in a lab group, you automatically go to this Azure AD group, which then grants you access during that time frame. I guess that's possible.
Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, this is all like, let's see what the simplest possible way first. But there's not any documentation on these use cases. I wasn't aware they have
Not
a
yet.
REST API, but we know there's a REST API now. I'm not sure what would happen. How do we invite someone, right? Is that a REST API too? Probably is. So
Nah, there'll be some limitation to it, where it's like almost there but not quite.
yeah, and there's so there are some limitations. One other interesting limitation they have is if you deploy a lab and then no one logs into the lab within 30 days, it goes away. So the resources our pre-assigned resources get pulled out. So there's actually a message that comes up. I didn't see it today, and because of COVID, they've been pushing a whole bunch of this stuff out. If you create a bunch of the stuff, and some of it you get charged for through your Azure subscription, but some of it, resources are not in the Azure tenant per se, like VMs would be, or storage, all the different Azure stuff you would see. You see them inside there. When you look through the Azure tenant, you don't see these virtual machines as entities when they're running in your Azure tenant. You
Right.
See an
Right.
individual.
It's built from Microsoft's tenant.
Right.
Or the lab's tenant is then billing you for the usage of those, but it's not part of your tenant.
Yeah. That's a good way to say it. And I was like, kind of weird, but so there's a lot of interesting thing. I just found it was really nice because a school doesn't have to build out a lab with all these high-end graphics or just whatever is needed for a certain thing. And mostly if teaching computer science, a 2-core machine with 3.5 gigs of RAM, probably not sufficient. Probably need a little bit more. But then you have to have 10, 20, however many students are in that lab, pandemic aside. It needs to be in a facility where you can usher people in, give them some lab time, usher them out. The next class comes in. So it's, time sharing on the hardware, access to the hardware has to be in a location. This way, all of that's removed and it's just in the cloud. You can, if you had 10 students sign up for the class this month, and next month you have 200 students sign up for the same class, you just add 200 users to the next class, not have to find another 190 machines that then will sit idle
Yeah.
for 18 hours or so every day.
Well, and the pandemic is a good example of this, because my brother is a CAD teacher at a high school, teaching Inventor and architecture with CAD design, and he has a lab that has all the stuff. They have high-end CAD computers. Well, they've been at home ever since last March.
Right.
And so none of the students have access to the computers because they can't go into school. And my brother has had to figure out alternate ways to teach the content that the students can't do because they can't come into a lab. But if it's virtual and they can log in from their Chromebook, they can use an AutoCAD Inventor on a high-end system and not have to go into class. Also, those computers that are sitting idle in my brother's classroom were really expensive,
3 or 4
and they
grand
haven't
each.
had anybody touch them. $4,000 or $5,000 each. In a year, they haven't been touched. But nonetheless, even if they had been touched, that's expensive for 30 computers. And when one fails, somebody has to deal with the technical issues of that, not just the cost of dealing with getting it repaired, but the fact that the student doesn't have a computer to work on today. Whereas this is agnostic with hardware. So
And
if they can see a web
depreciation,
browser,
too.
there's
Those machines
depreciation, there's
depreciate.
taxes,
It's going to
there's
be
electricity,
outdated
there's
in
space,
3 years.
there's space.
Yeah. So there's a whole lot of aspects to it. That's why I thought was like, this is really interesting. We had one of our resellers reached out to me, like I said, 2.5 weeks ago, and said, "Oh, there's this thing. What do you know about what we can do?" And it's like, I really don't know anything about it. Let me look at it. So I thought it was really cool. And I think it's going to have a lot of good use cases, even for higher education, right? So you're teaching CAD. So I did a thing where I deployed an instance with Visual Studio, a specific instance of Visual Studio for doing graphics programming and stuff like that. So it also deployed Unity. So Unity, the licensing. So I was looking at the licensing, right? So like CAD, a lot of CAD licenses, you have to have a license, but they're SaaS licenses, right? They're not node locked. So
right.
We deploy the software, so that could take a couple hours to get all that revved up, this, that, and that. And then they have an education, a lot of these stuff like Adobe and some of the other CAD companies or Unity. You get a student account that's good for a month or a year, whatever you need. And so you log onto the virtual machine, the software's there, and you start it. Even Visual Studio is the same now too. You start it, well, not the community edition, but a professional edition. Then it asks you to log in. So you log in and your license is good, right? So, and so I went through some of that too last week, and that worked just fine. So get the software stack installed. The things with SaaS-based licensing, once they're connected to it, it'll ask them for their logins, and that's on them. As an administrator, I don't have to worry about it. I like the fact that it uses the third-party logins rather than the default. Everyone's got the same password login. Use that. The instructor doesn't have to worry about reminding someone what their password is or necessarily resetting it. I think a common username password might be good for, 6th grade or less, maybe. But, I'm not that kind of educator, so I don't know.
Unless you rotate it, and that takes documentation updating. The other thing too is that with labs, re-imaging is physical labs, re-imaging, resetting all your devices back to the way they need to be. But what if you have like 3 different labs in one day? You're re-imaging those machines 3 times per day with different images. It's time consuming, and if you have a fail, there's troubleshooting. And you know, like I even think 20 years ago, I was driving to Roanoke to do some Microsoft certifications in a third-party lab. And there was, every time I did one of those, there was always something that didn't work right. And it had something to do with something didn't image, this computer didn't get refreshed, and all that kind of stuff. And, you know, like this problem has existed for a long time.
Oh, yeah.
And this solves it, because when you log in, you get the machine that you need, or you register, you get what you need on your machine, no conflicts. You know, like even thinking about my brother, he teaches architecture who uses Autodesk architecture, and then he has his engineering team who uses Inventor. 2 different software packages. They're both Autodesk, but they don't need the other piece of software installed on their computer and whatever problems that might cause. And so there's no reason to make a golden image with every case. It's like, oh no, this is a golden image for this. Here's a golden image for this. And each lab, each class just uses what's appropriate for them. And they don't get sidetracked going, hey, what's this on here?
And I didn't see any specific, like I said, there's marketplace images for a lot. One of the ones that we deployed like a week or 2 ago, well, last Monday for end user was the Kali Linux computer security package, right? So it's nested. So they deployed a nested Windows machine, and one of the other machines that comes pre-deployed is Kali Linux, and I forgot what the third one is. So if you do the nested machine, you've got virtualization in virtualization. So they have their own little 3-node, 4-node machine set of a whole bunch all together networked. And so you push it out. They've got all the machines in one. If you could do peering, you could have multiple machines talking to each other and do it that way too. But this way, it's all in that one student's control. Every student's got a set number of virtual machines already staged and stacked in that gold image or the marketplace image that you push out to them. And if they mess it up, let's say they totally, park it so it goes dead, right? They really mess it up, just redeploy them a new instance with a click of a couple buttons.
Makes me wonder, what other use cases are there? When at the beginning you were talking about this is a classroom context, and you couldn't even think of what other context could one use this for?
And that's what I don't know. So the documentation said that classroom labs are the only type, something like the only types that are currently available. And I'm trying to think of like, well, what else is there available? And the only thing, so Azure Labs, Dev Labs predated this, right? So you could do things where you could spin up virtual machines of all different types and automate how to spin them up, et cetera, right? And I touched that probably like a year or so ago. I was looking at that and integrating that with GitHub and stuff, so I can do automated deployments of builds and stuff like that. But I don't know. I'm not sure what that means. And I guess we'll find out.
Yeah, I kind of want to explore that mentally with myself. And my team does a lot of testing, and we have a whole group of testers and test machines and all kinds of stuff. And most of that stuff's ephemeral, because you don't really want to test with something that's been around for a while, unless that's what you're looking for, because it could mess your results up. In a lab, you get a control of starting clean every time without having to do it all yourself. And there might be some value, from a computer science perspective, of having a control group of here's a bunch of machines, they all got created, we could run some tests and then blow it all away and start over again tomorrow without having to do that manually. Like, I mean, I could do that tonight. I could go into Azure and set up all these VMs and set up a golden image and do all that kind of stuff. That's a lot of work to just set up a test environment versus setting it up like a classroom where you can mess around.
And maybe you might be honest. Maybe that's what they're doing to like stage up a whole bunch of stuff you pay for just they're running. They're done deploying. They're done. The software tests have been running on it and it's done and they automatically shut off because you can stage that in the interface now. Maybe that's what they're going. I don't know. The one thing I would like to see them added to it, which I don't think I haven't seen anything, is if they had a RD web interface for the virtual machines. So I can do. I didn't touch on it, but I can deploy Linux machines too. But I just primarily did Windows. But I got a CentOS machine. For that, you'd use SSH. But what if I didn't have to RDP and I could access a machine like in WVD, where it's got the RD web interface, right? So,
Well, yeah, the web using a web browser that has a control that does RDP through it.
yeah.
That would be a critical improvement for this, because I can see that being used in the classroom environment. Why have a client or an ability to have to get in, go agnostic? Here's your browser and here's your desktop in the
Right.
browser.
And that's the
Yeah.
one thing is for students, educators, like K through 12. So Cynics is huge in Google Chrome too, right? And we do a lot of service to schools. We also do a lot of Chromebooks, and we've got a lot of I think at one point 70% of the install base for Google Classroom in EDU, like K through 12 EDU, they came through us, right? So there's a lot of infrastructure there that we've got sort of look into. So these people have RDP. We have to teach them through there, but it'd be a whole lot simpler if it was a RD web interface, right? So the students don't have to like install the app for RDP and then link to it. It'll take a couple steps out. They just get the address. They just go to the address, right? Any browser, you can do it on your phone. You could like, I don't even know if the Chrome RDP works on the phone. You wouldn't want to do it on your phone because PC interface, but that would be an improvement.
So they actually do something like that with Microsoft Learn, right? Where you have your classroom computer actually in the browser. So
Ron, you're muted.
No, he's not. I hear him.
well, no.
Oh,
Did you mute me?
okay. No. Sorry, it's me.
Okay.
How are you muted and still talking?
Thanks a lot, Tony. I know where
My
I stand
bad.
in your priority list.
My bad.
Yeah, no, but if you spin up like learns.microsoft.com, you have a class there. They actually have like the program on the left, and on the right hand side, you kind of have your shell going. So that would be ideal for a class. That way, you don't have to do that RDP. It's actually all in your browser.
Oh, and I've run some of that stuff too. So
Yeah.
I've done some of that stuff with, it's a VM type in the browser that's embedded. I would imagine that's, oh God. They had a third party they were doing that from. I forgot who they got. One of the guys at Microsoft told me what they were using, but it's been a while. But yeah, it has the instructions on the right, and you just step through that, and you can fast forward, and you can copy and paste from the right side to the left side to, complex command strings and stuff that you have to enter in PowerShell or whatever.
Yeah.
And I think that, Microsoft Learn does have that as well. Not the best cases though. Sometimes it doesn't work right.
I noticed that. I had one more question about the student labs. If a student logs out, Does their storage go away as well, or is that preserved between sessions? So if I have my desktop is spun up, if I log out and it shuts down, the compute resource goes away, but does the storage go away as well? Is it reset to the image, or does it stay for the duration of the course so that I can store files locally, or do I have to put it in like GitHub or a box or something like that?
No, it stays resident on the machine.
Okay.
There's a couple of caveats though. Like one thing is you need to figure out some place to put this after the machine goes away. Because if a machine's not accessed in 30 days, this is their COVID restrictions that I see when you log in. My understanding is that machine image is stored somewhere out in the cloud, not in your Azure tenant, sort of disappears because no one's using it, right?
Okay.
So if you invite a student to the lab, and they don't log in and use it within 30 days, that invitation, that short template or deployment of that machine, it's a small disk, right? It's a virtual hard drive. That just goes away. Then you have to invite them again and they start fresh. And this is one of the things that I was working on with this other prospect was in my Azure tenant, I do a peered network and I have Azure files as a storage space. Then they can do that so that it stays long-term resident. Or if they're logging in through an account and they've got a OneDrive account or a G Drive, then we can map a OneDrive. G Drive, I don't know. I have a G Drive account, but I don't use it for that much. But OneDrive, if you have a OneDrive account and they're free for up to 2 gigs, I think, I can map that as a local drive. Right, so I can get a free OneDrive, then that gives me a couple gigs, so I can map that as a local drive on my Windows machine. So there's a number of ways to affect that long-term storage.
Okay.
So
But yeah, as long as you stay within the class of the 30 days, your local storage stays there. So you don't have to worry about, oh my God, every time that I log out, I have to make sure that everything is safe.
Oh, no. The stuff is, so the stuff stays resident. So, I mean, I did a thing with the machine. That was the first thing I checked was bring up a machine, change my desktop background, put some shortcuts on my desktop, add some files, shut it down, log in later, and they're still there, right? So I don't want like a clean slate every time. So it'll stay there. But the long-term storage, because of this condition they have right now, is, let's say I'm doing computer science. I'm a computer science major, right? And I'm middle of Montana, and I've got Starlink, right? So I'm all doing them all remotely, or whatever, what have you. During the summer, I'm not going to school, so I've got 75 to 90 days off. But if I have a file storage somewhere of my files, I may want to reference those when I come back in for the next school year. Or now I'm going from CS 101 to CS 102, but it's building on that.
I think this is an interesting topic, but I think we're digressing away from the concept that a lab machine is going to be ephemeral.
Yeah.
And have a life of a duration of whatever, like earlier, 24 hours, or if it's a week-long course, it's only going to last a week. And after that, it would be gone anyway. So anything that one would want to save, and I'm just going back to the scientific exploration side that I was talking about earlier. Any data you collected from those VMs, whatever you were doing, whatever experiment it was, needs to go somewhere to be analyzed and centralized. And so as a lab goes, those should never be persistent except for throughout the duration of the lab.
Right.
And if the lab is going to last more than 30 days, that probably exceeds the whole idea of a lab.
Yeah.
Unless you're doing scientific research, because even a CS lab, I mean, if a university were to use this on a semester basis, the rules would have to be set up for that whole semester and or maybe the following summer. But I think the idea would be that, and this is what we were talking about earlier with Mike, of having a way to map a drive to some persistent storage that's not necessarily on a local area network, but a cloud storage. And so, the OneDrive you just mentioned is an option. Azure Files, possible.
Or
But to not save.
CloudBerry too gives you the ability to do that through Azure storage, blob storage. But that's a different thing than providing, like you said, the infrastructure for the duration of the lab. The storage is something else. The storage they want to keep long term.
Yeah, that was my
But even
class that lasts 3 days, like a boot camp or something like that. That you don't have to make sure that at the end of every day or before every break you save your stuff, because if you don't touch a machine for 30 minutes, it's being decommissioned basically. Right. And you have to start all over again. That would be painful.
Yeah, I would think that whoever designed the lab should have it set to that storage get set somewhere other than the VM, because one of the advantages of VMs is I can't log in. I get a blue screen. I don't know what happened. Windows updated over the night and I'm toast. Yeah. And in a lab environment, you don't have a network administrator who's going to remote in and grab your files out of your cache and bring them over. It would be better to design the lab in a way that like all work gets stored here.
Right.
And so if you have to get a fresh VM in the morning, well, just take those files, copy them to this computer, and you're back up and running again.
Or they would just auto remount. They just automatically mount back up to your space. Yeah. If you had OneDrive.
And the other thing is that depending on the size of your lab too, if it's an hour or two lab, you don't have to worry about continuous storage, and you can probably break up a longer lab in smaller sections. And you say, like, okay, for this lab, we're using this lab environment. And then after that, you go to this lab environment. And it would just be a smaller lab.
Well, and one of the things that I've been doing I've actually been doing this for a couple of years now, is some of the Visual Studio or VS Code program I've been doing. I start the projects in a OneDrive.
Yeah. So
it's automatically backed up to the cloud. And if I go on to another machine, I can open that project on the other machine. So I'm saying OneDrive takes care of that, but I'm trying to like see, other than that, is there some other ways we could do that, right?
Yeah.
And then also have shared storage too. So a number of users might want to auto mount storage so everyone sees, like maybe they want to copy some stuff out of some central repository that they all have access to, or submit files to a certain directory, right? And check in your lab assignments, whatever the lab assignment is. You take the copy of the file and you drop it in. This is mine, right?
Kind of like dropping off your papers at the end of the semester or the end of the class.
Yeah. Right. So I mean, there's just myriad different ways to do that, but so what are the types of attached storage that I could access from the labs besides just OneDrive? So playing with that.
Sorry, something else that popped up, and I don't know if you guys talked about it, but if you have a student and he has a problem, can you like shadow what he's doing on that machine?
That I don't know.
Oh, good question. Oh, that's a so good question.
I believe you can. You can do screen sharing if the software is installed, right? So okay, it's a Windows system, so you can. It's a Windows 10. If you got Windows 10, it's built into Windows 10. It's screen sharing, right?
Okay.
And actually, with the Chrome RDP, if that's installed, I don't know about Linux, but so Windows 10 has that screen sharing built into it by default for a few years now, or even before that. A native tool for doing that, I don't know. There is, I think I saw in the instructor's interface, there's a way to log into the machine, a student's machine,
Right.
from, you see the list of different students, and you can click on the button. I believe there's a thing that says log into that machine.
Yeah, and I saw that too when you were doing it. It's like the little, almost like copy icon.
Yeah.
And it reminded me, like, oh yeah, I remember that when I was following one of the classes, the teacher could actually look over what you're doing and see if what your mistake was, because it's always when you're talking through a mistake, you always forget 15 steps between the two things that you're doing. When you look over somebody's shoulder, it's 100 times easier.
But I think that in that
Yeah.
case, through the lab instructor's interface, it's logging into the machine under a different user context, so you can see the files and everything, but you can't see what they're doing.
No.
But with Windows, you can share your desktop out. It's a machine that's in the cloud, and it gives them a
Yeah.
link, and you can screen share that way. If you're doing Visual Studio Code, there's the
Code
that's
share.
built into. Yeah. So
Yeah.
it depends on the application.
Hey.
So
Hey, Brian, I think that's a wonderful question. However, I think that most labs and the way they have it set up, they have a will and a way, whether it's a piece of software that they load on the client and the host to be able to do that.
Mhm.
And whatever that software is, whether it's like TeamViewer or the RDP or Windows Help, probably have a process in place that would work with this also. And if they were to just load that client in their golden image for the guest side of it, they probably could use that same technology that they use today in a physical lab.
It could, but I've seen people struggle with remote desktoping into a machine. And if I then had to explain to them, like, okay, now you need to share your screen. And it would be nice if the lab actually had something already built in that I can say, like, okay, I know that this person is RDP to this machine. Now I just want to copy his RDP session and see what he's doing without him having.
Yeah, well, in a lab environment, there's lots of other tools other than that one could use that they do. Successful labs have interfaces and, software that they have purchased and installed to manage all of this, where they can see the desktops before the kids even say, teachers can see, here's everyone's desktop in a grid, and I just click that desktop, and each computer has some sort of software on it that is providing the control from the teacher. And thus, I think that software would work in this environment as well, because
absolutely.
So however they're doing it today could work.
Right.
And I agree, that would be nice if it had.
Sorry, go ahead.
It would be nice if they had that integrated into this.
Exactly.
As an option.
How does Microsoft will position this lab software? Is it like more like, okay, it's a specialized form of VMs, and whatever you bring to the rest of the table, whatever you need, that's what you have to provide yourself, or we're going to add some more tools to it, like the screen sharing or the screen copying or the shadowing or some other things that can be integrated with it.
That is probably the best tool they could add.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I would say the best one is do an RD web interface, so we could just have a quick link.
Yes.
That would be first, but this would be second, I think. But it's fairly new still, right? And they may be working on that. I'm sure they've talked to a lot of people already with feedback of some kind. So where it goes, the other thing is there's only 8 or 10 different sizes of VMs you could use out of the hundreds that are available in Azure.
Yeah.
Would they open that up too? Although I think we're sufficient on there, but there's a couple of things like that I think would help. And I specifically see the need for an instructor to basically mirror onto someone's desktop, right? But have it built in, because I think we have software that does that too, that we sell. I have to see who does that, where we could remote into any student's desktop at any particular time and see exactly what they're doing, right? Not necessarily spying, but maybe something comes up. Hey, the teacher wants to look at your desktop. Click the button.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think I did one of those classes from Microsoft one time where they had what you described, the instructions on the right and then the virtual desktop on the left. And there's always one or two people who have problems with connecting to it or starting up something or typing in this or typing in that. So that it would be nice to say, like, okay, I'll just look over your shoulder without any other software and everything. You don't have to do anything else. I'll just sit there and watch what you're doing.
and also I found the first one that I did of that was I think I was in Chevy Chase at a Microsoft place, and I went there with a small Surface laptop, or not a laptop, the Surface 4, right?
Yeah.
And it was not enough screen real estate. I've got glasses, so it was too small real estate when they had that and this, and it's like, oh my God, I can't say anything.
Yeah.
But so we'll see what's going on. It was. I got the opportunity to speak on this, and I got the opportunity to present whatever I wanted that was unique or interesting and outside of security. So
Yeah, no, this is really interesting because I was thinking about what we do with our company. If we
what business are you in right now?
we're in the locksmith business. We're medical security locks in Salem. The main thing where we would use this for is our key control software, where we have a management tool to control who can access what lock with their key. To do some training there without having anybody to spin up an Azure or an AWS instance and play around with that and destroy that. I just don't know if there's any hardware that's involved in that because we have some programmers there too. So that would be a limiting factor because that would be harder to link them together.
Right.
Although you could do remote desktoping with USB connections, right?
I haven't tried hooking any hardware to these machines.
Yeah. Yeah, we
don't-
probably have to try that out too, because not all pieces of hardware like that to be shared through remote desktoping.
Hey guys, I gotta drop. I don't think the call will drop when I go. Anybody?
We'll find out.
No, I really don't think it will.
No.
You gotta me, would it? I think we're gonna-
No, it won't drop. It won't drop.
Yeah, pretty sure.
Shouldn't.
Yep.
All right, Jim. Take it easy, man. I think you're breaking up a little here.
I'm sorry. Stan?
Yeah, we had one of the deployments last week. They were doing labs and student labs. They were an ISV and they train their users globally, and they were spinning up. So they have a new lab for 30 users on their medical devices in like Brisbane, right? And then the next week they're going to do Japan because they have a new version of their software, right? They have a bunch of different software for different medical devices depending on what they're controlling.
Yeah.
So they've been using, oh God, I forgot the name of the software package for auto deploying stuff. It's an automated process, not Kubernetes.
Chef.
It's like Chef or Jenkins or something. So they had this huge stack to deploy virtual machines, and it was complicated, right? So, and they wanted the instructors or the secretaries of whatever their regional offices to be able to deploy these virtual machines, and so the resellers then having to create that and do it. So, long story short is they use that mechanism to deploy virtual machines based on a list of users that they're going to invite, and it spins it up in AWS. And then the virtual machines run resident, getting billed 24 hours a day until someone goes and turns them back off and, and destroys the lab. And they're like, oh, this is just going to like be fantastic for us because if someone misses the lab or doesn't come in on time, and like I said, they're not doing it more than 6 hours a day, right? Because they got lunch and everything else.
Yeah.
So they do this and they stage them up a day or two before the lab starts or whatever. And so they pay for that virtual machines for all those users for the whole time. And this way it just gives them a lot of times, and the machine doesn't start until each specific user wants to start their instance.
Right, right. Yeah, and the cost is very acceptable. I saw some of the calculations. I didn't quite know what that adjustment value was, because one of them you had like 4 users for 14 hours, and there was like what was it, 56 hours total, but then there was like a 26-hour adjustment, and you got to the 82.
Yeah, I'm not sure what happened with that. I've been messing with it, and like I said, Azure's been a little bit screwy. So
Yeah.
I'm having to do a lot of refresh, and it's like, this is not a good time. But it's pretty simple math. It's straightforward.
Yeah, the formula was pretty simple. When I went into the labs as well, I couldn't spin one up. I got an error message as well. But yeah, it was just like a number of machines times the factor times the number of hours times, what is it? I think it was a dime or so per hour, or 20 cents per hour, depending on.
Well, it's like 20 cents an hour up to almost $5 an hour for the 16 processor, 120 gigs of RAM, which is huge, right? But that's your high-end CAD programs, right?
Yeah. So yeah, it definitely beats the crap out of having 5 high-end laptops sitting there 90% of the time idle.
Right. So, like I said, I only came across this like when one of our customers came and asked me to help them with their customer do something with this, and I was like, "Oh, this is pretty cool. This is really, it's like WVD, but an on-demand WVD."
Yeah.
Without all the complexity.
Very cool. Well, thanks for showing, man.
Yeah.
Bless you.
Thank you.
You're very quick with the mute there.
Oh, it's reflex nowadays. Nowadays, it's reflex. Back on.
So, Tony, eventually you guys are going to have these back in a classroom, like a local environment, right?
Well, our group is we're a social group. Okay. And so, like, this got started as a social networking group. And Bob Tipton, who was on here earlier, created it. And he set the agenda as Azure.
Okay.
It's just Azure. It doesn't matter what it is in Azure. And so he ended up reeling in people who would not normally interact professionally, like Ron and I. Yeah. Ron's a developer. He works in an industry that has nothing to do with me. I'm a network administrator, so I'm an infrastructure guy, and I work for a civil engineering company. We're just down the road from each other. We live not too far from each other, but we would have never socially met. And what Bob did was bring all these Azure concepts together and get people like Ron and I together, where, I'm a network guy. I'm taking all my physical infrastructure, I'm moving it to the cloud. He's using Docker and creating Docker instances in the cloud. It has nothing to do with me. Like, we don't do any of that. I don't even know what Docker was before I joined the group. And, he knows about that. I know about networking. But then we, find out that there's a lot of interoperability between these two groups. We have Office 365. We have Azure Active Directory. You can use both of those in both of these contexts. And so it's like this group kind of bridged the gap between a whole bunch of people. We've had system admins from Virginia Tech join our group and be there and give talks. That one guy, I can't remember his name, but he was the DNS administrator for Virginia Tech. and
Sam?
he,
Indian guy?
no, not Sam. No, it was a guy that Sam brought.
Oh,
He had to do, his project was dealing with Azure Active Directory, local Active Directory, and Office 365 authentication so that users could authenticate to Office 365, but their domain, this is a university with security.
yeah.
And so depending if they were on-prem, they got DNS entries that routed them to the local replica of the Azure AD that would authenticate them. But if they're off campus in their
Go to-
dorm,
yeah.
it had to go to Microsoft to authenticate them, but then it had to come back into Virginia Tech's network to re-authenticate them and send them back up. The reason it was so complicated is that Virginia Tech was not allowed to share their passwords with Microsoft.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
Microsoft doesn't know the internal passwords because it would be a violation of university policy to share those with the outside.
Yeah,
And then he talked to us about another complexity, and that is Virginia Tech partnered with Carillion, which is a hospital system, and they have a whole educational system with Carillion. And in Roanoke, there is a hospital school environment between the two. And these students had to be able to cross-authenticate without any knowledge of passwords, or one's, oh shoot, what's the regulation? HIPAA. One's HIPAA. The other one is educationally related and state regulated,
Yeah.
different regulations, and not all students are one or the other, but some are both. And so they had to do it wasn't even a federation. It was to the point where Microsoft didn't even know how to bill them for the work that was involved. And I don't know if you remember the takeaway from that meeting, but he's like, we haven't paid a bill in like a year because Microsoft doesn't have a mechanism to bill us because it's tenant, subtenant, other tenant, cross tenant, and they just haven't figured this out. So anyway, I know I'm kind of rambling, but anyway, this is the kind of fun people that we get to network in with through our group that we wouldn't have ever had a chance to network with.
And the funny thing is too, I wish I paid more attention back then, because who knew that everybody would be running into that same problem down the road, starting about a year ago, when all of a sudden you have everybody logging in from outside the building and authenticating their internal password.
A little
true.
trick with that is the Azure B2C, or you can have a B2B
Yeah.
tenant. So you can, in Azure, you can deploy a B2C, B2B Active Directory space that then users then log into it. And unless you're doing MFA and password checkbacks or resets and stuff through that, well, you wouldn't do it through that. There's a few things that actually bill on that, but that marrying outside parties to be access to your network is free.
Yeah.
At the base level. So I've deployed that. It's been a year ago, but I saw that. It's like, well, I could see it. It's not in my tenant, but it's sort of accessed by my tenant. But it marries up to the authentication between the two. But there's no billing for it. There's some things that get billed, but I forgot what they were. It's been a while. But I saw that. That I think I still have it deployed because it doesn't cost me anything.
Yeah, and I think that's actually what's happening, because we put up, for some of the application, we have the single sign-on, and the single sign-on uses the internal AD to authenticate. But I'm logging in through a Microsoft service, and the Microsoft service says like, oh wait, you're logging into the Assa Abloy network. Let me hand it off to the Assa Abloy SSO,
Right.
and they give me back a token saying like, oh, you're good to go.
Yeah, it's so the users at both sides have to create like a trust environment, a trust relationship. But once that's done, and so I set this up a while ago, I forgot what project it was. Really slick, but there was no pricing for it.
Yeah.
Because I didn't add the extra stuff you can do, and I forgot exactly what that was. But so, yeah, it's like you can marry two discrete Active Directory tenants together that way. I thought was really cool. So it's branched off the B2C stuff, where if people log in with their whatever accounts they have. And
Mike, have you ever worked with a client as large as a university like Virginia Tech?
yeah, not in this role. Well, let me think.
Not in this role.
I've got
recently.
I've got who is it? Oh God, there's a big university in San Diego that I've been working with off and on.
Well, the reason I was asking was that another guy in our group, remember Blair? He's the sysadmin or web admin for the Pamplin College of Business. Well, the university had each department is its own tenant, a subtenant of Virginia Tech's Azure tenant.
Yeah.
And because they're subtenants of a master tenant, and from working with Azure that subtenant is not actually a thing, but they are structurally. And so I don't know how Microsoft has handled clients like that, but there is no way to give a departmental tenant access role. And so his department has no view at the cost analysis for their department. They can just spend, but they don't actually, because they're not authorized to look at the costs for Virginia Tech as a whole. It's just their department, the Department of Business, the Department of Engineering, no one can be given access to see anything outside of their own department. And thus, things like cost analysis and budgets don't actually work. Well, they're not available.
Yeah, they would be under an EA agreement. So I've worked with customers at that size. I'm working with some. I don't work with any in Cynics. I don't work with any EA agreements, but I've done like Lloyd's of London, 4 major banks out of Australia. I made this time machine software testing and stuff years ago. And so I travel the world and all these big companies, China Bank, Mercedes-Benz. I've been all over these huge organizations, but I've never worked in their tenant space, right? But so working with some places that have Azure tenants, but never been managing or interfacing with an EA tenant, and that's a different kind of beast. However, the cost management piece may have some ability to give that to them now. Azure plan.
Maybe now. That's true. This was a year ago.
The Azure plan they just came out with that changes it a lot. I have no idea what that looks like under an EA agreement, but I can do certain things where I can give role-based access control to just that piece, perhaps. Which I never really bothered to look into. That then they could see just their piece, right? There's some stuff I'm on my list of doing things like doing Power BI dashboards that can then push that stuff out. So you could publish a dashboard from Azure to just show them their costs.
That's a good idea.
Well, I'm curious, Ron, what kind of visibility do you have into the finances in your tenant?
None.
Okay.
We have one big tenant for all of us Alvori Americas, and we've departmentalized it with resource groups and tags within the resource groups. So every resource that we spin up is either going to be a production or a test, and then you can either put it on the East Coast or the West Coast. And then there's tags automatically attached to the resource based on the policies that says like, oh, this is Medico, and it's that and that cost center, and Ron is technically responsibility for it. But yeah, it would be nice if we can actually go to the cost management module and just see what is attached to Medico, because I would love to find out if the cluster that I spun up, if that's costing us $100 or $3,000.
Yeah, well, you should be able to do that. Let me just share my desktop here with the
Yeah.
brought it up
And
earlier.
I like the idea what you said, Mike, about the Power BI.
Yeah, this is a thing I'm working on. So this is just this resource group. It has its own cost analysis in it. So I'm looking at just this burst. So if I
Oh, so you can create resource groups and then allocate permissions to see that.
Yeah.
right, so I
Wow.
can go to burst, and then I can do access control on that and give people, I can give individuals complete access to this, not to the subscription and not to the whole tenant, but just to this resource group. And from that, I could do cost analysis. So maybe someone's got full control or administrative control on just this resource group, and then they can see, it takes a minute, they can see what that resource group is costing and what the forecast is. If I go to the master tenant, and it changes everything. Where's the cost management? Yeah, cost management. So if I go to that, now I'm an admin. Well, I was admin anyways, and I just go to cost management. Then I can see all the resources, right?
Yeah.
And then they'll all come up.
That's
here.
cool. That's cool. It seems like that's new.
It is. It's part of the Azure plan, and I believe that EA's got that. So Ron, are you on an EA agreement? Or are you on a CSP?
I'm pretty sure we are. No, I think we're on an EA agreement. Let me see if I can go to my resource group and see if I can pull up the cost.
Yeah, if you have permissions in the resource group to deploy new stuff, that probably means that you've got the full access for that. I don't know. I never had that question posed to me, but I know from the resource group itself, you could see
I'll
into
be
the.
damned. I do.
Sweet.
Yeah?
Yeah, I go to
No
resource.
way. Awesome.
There's cost analysis there. Now I can see how much these resources cost us.
Sweet.
Yeah. That's awesome. That gives me a little bit of a better, so I can even see like, hey, how much does it cost us this year? How much does it cost us last year?
Yep, and there's
Yeah,
lots of
cost
filters you can put
analysis
on it.
is awesome as long as you have access to it.
Well, it with the new Azure plan, with the stuff they had before was horrible, right? They had this interim, I forgot the name of it. Cloudin software. They tried that. Microsoft bought Cloudin like 2-3 years ago. It was horrible.
Yeah.
And then we did that for all our tenants. We've got 65,000 Azure CSP tenants. So it really bogged down. But there's a new cost. If you look at the new cost analysis, let me show you the preview. I don't know if you have the preview or not. I found this interesting. So I did the cost analysis preview.
Okay.
And I can look at, like I run a Power BI embedded, right? So I can see what my costs are for the A1 or A2. So I changed it from A2 to A1. I don't know if you know Power BI embedded, but it's a way to like push dashboards out without having the full Power BI premium.
Oh, okay.
So if you're paying $5,000 a month, but you only got 10 Power BI creators, Power BI embedded, I can look at a virtual machine. I can see the cost for, this is the preview version, not the regular, but
Yeah.
you know, there's the VM, there's the bandwidth, there's the licenses. I'm running burst on this stuff. So kind of like slice and dice it all kinds of different ways. I can do cost alerts too. I could set budgets at the resource level.
Yeah.
So just all kinds of goodness, all part of the new Azure plan. I have no idea what the EA stuff looks like though, but I understand that it's very much the same thing.
This is cool. I need to dive into this because I see a big cost here.
Hey, I have an idea, Ron. Maybe you can present on this next week.
No, 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 no.
Throw me to the wolves, especially not next week.
Oh, I'm just kidding.
No, but this is how we learn. So this is what we usually do in person, and we learn all kinds of cool stuff and explore it.
Well, this is also
So-
new. So the Azure plan just came out a few months ago, right? Just maybe 5-6 months ago. You have to update to it if you don't currently have it. But it gives you this kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
Which maybe some of your people don't know. So maybe that's a good idea for a subject for a while down the road. We could do something on cost management and you know where you do. I'm like I said, I'm working on Power BI so I can pull that out because I don't necessarily want to have.
I think Power BI
CFOs.
would be a. Hey, what are you doing next month? Power BI?
I can do that if you want. I'm not.
Oh, dude, I would love that.
You know, I did some. Actually, there's some really cool stuff coming in Power BI as well, and so I'm trying to do this. So I've got cost management for these subscriptions, right? And so some companies that are cloud native, most of all, you know, except for the devices the individuals have that they carry around with, they're having their home offices. Most of their services, the majority of their service costs, infrastructure costs, are in Azure. So CFOs don't want to go into Azure to see this. We want to export the reports out. But I'm thinking, push it off to Power BI. They could see a result, updated every half hour to once a day, and the CFO just goes to a website and just sees the report. Where's my cost? You know, what's the change? What's the delta from day 1 to day 2? You know.
And maybe not even on that detail level, but more rolled into the rest of their financial reporting, which they do in Power BI anyway.
Yeah.
So
exactly. I could do Power BI
also,
next month if you want. You know, so I can put something together on that.
I think that might pull some people back in again. Blair would come back in for that. He's definitely into that. Data reporting is huge. I mean, as an IT person, that's our job, is to data report.
Well, you know, there's stuff we're working on. So I've got this NUC over here. What's all plugged in? I'm not gonna grab. I got a Asus NUC, right? So Asus gave me a NUC, and I got a Chrome. Is that Chrome or Chromebox too? So they're all sitting there, and I turn them off on one. So with this Azure NUC, Asus NUC device, which is a small mini computer, I run the on-premise data gateway, and I connect it to my SQL server, and then I create a local Power BI report, and I generate the fields out of that database that I want, and it publishes it up to Power BI into this new thing called a data flow, which is a concept that came out of Dynamics, right? So now I got this data flow that automatically updates onto my on-premise database the information off of there. The on-premise database could also be somewhere else in the cloud. So I'm streaming that data once a day or up to like every 30 minutes, or is it 15 minutes, into Power BI. And then I'm interfacing with information from Microsoft and information from our corporate database as far as customers, our account reps, and then merging that up and making reports that have an overlay for all of that stuff together, all in Power BI. Really cool stuff.
Yeah.
It is.
Our data guy was explaining to me a little bit about the data flows, and I was like, "This looks interesting," but.
Oh no, it's cool. So we get a couple of reports from Microsoft. Generally about once a month, we pull down the recon files, which is for, like I said, 65,000 tenants. All the pricing and the infrastructure, all the details on that. And then I have to marry that to the assigned reps that are responsible for that, so they can see, what's going on, and we can then see, our customers selling more VMs this month than last month or whatever. So put that off in the dashboard.
Yeah.
The other one is Microsoft gives us propensity file for all our end users, not our resellers, but all the end users that they know are registered through our reseller channels. So this is a lot more than 65,000. And that tells us if their SQL Server licenses are expiring, or if they're on AWS or GCP, because they collect these data points and stuff about all the kinds of stuff through any time they interact. So I can bring all that up, and I also then marry it to our assigned reps in Power BI. So I merge those together in a data flow, and then I create a dashboard that I then present out, and then so users can see all this information about their customers.
That is cool. That is. This will give me a couple of hours of digging around, because I did not know that I had that ability, and it's good to see that. One of the things that we did was we have a developer server, which normally gets shut down at the end of the day at 7 o'clock at night. We were working on a project, and I was leaving it up and running until 7 o'clock Friday night. So every Friday I went in and able to schedule again. And then come Monday morning, if nobody screamed, I would just leave it off. But if I compare it to like the fourth quarter of last year and the first quarter of this year, that machine has cost us a whopping $168.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
even
Cost analysis is awesome.
Yeah.
You have to learn how to use it properly.
And
It's very annoying.
to top that off, I'm also do the Power Platform stuff too. So you can make a Power Platform app, Power Automate, that then publish to a website, so you can have someone click a button to turn the machine off and on without having to go to Azure.
We were working on that because we're still using business objects as well. And one of the guys built a dashboard in business objects. And I was going to display it on one of the monitors that we're going to have in the factory. It was beautiful, but the only problem was I had to minimize the sidebar. I had to maximize the screen. I had to hide something else, and I had to change the font size and everything. And unfortunately, that was not saved by business objects. So the next time they logged in, everything was back like, instead of using the whole screen for the dashboard, they were using like 2/3 of the screen. The rest was all Chrome and crap. And I was like, how can we automate that? And that week, Microsoft decides to bring Power Automate Desktop out for free. I was like, thank you.
So that was just recently, right? No,
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I've been doing Power Automate too. I mean, Power Automate, Power Apps. What is the other one? I even got it on my phone. I was looking to see if I could bring it up. So, and then what was the other thing? Oh, so Teams. So I'm doing bots, bot automation, or bots, Power Flow. So Power Flow, all that stuff I kind of like been dabbling in. It was like really cool. And then I pushed real world stuff out there.
I've been using Flows as well. I got an integration with my calendar. Whenever there's a meeting on my calendar, it automatically creates a card in Trello for that same day, so that I have an overview in Trello. Like, okay, what can I do in the day? Like, oh wait, I got a meeting, so I only have, instead of 6 hours or 8 hours available, I only have 4 hours available. So maybe today I shouldn't schedule that many cards.
Right. So I made this, which is, so you can't see it.
Like, hold your hand behind.
Nice. How'd you do that?
Yeah.
No, so it's a Power app. It's a Power app with all our clients, all our customers from our Stellar group, right? There's a lot.
Yeah.
All our Windows, Azure, Office 365, Dynamics customers. I created that in Power Apps, also looking at the data flow, right? So because they change, right?
Yeah.
And it also has the assigned reps. So once I had all that done in Power BI and Power Flow and got all that stuff, I can just make the app. So now in my app, I can look up a customer and figure out who their assigned rep is without having to log into our CIS system or our Stellar platform, or look up a list that's in Excel and look for the customer name.
Yeah.
So just there's so much stuff I could be doing, and I always get diverted by something else.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because we have an old application that's using a SQL backend, luckily, but it was completely an Access application before.
Ooh, yeah.
And it's still an Access front end, but it's giving us a lot of headaches. So I was like, we need to migrate, and we were looking at like a React or a Vue application. I said, you know what? I wonder how much effort it would be to make it a Power app.
Not much.
I know.
Well, I would like to say that the DBase is better than Access, because I used to be part of the DBase team back in the day. It's a Borland software, right? That's where I got my start, was Borland Database Engine Group, Paradox, all that stuff. But
Oh, I got started with Pascal, the Borland Pascal
Yeah,
IDE.
Yeah.
I did the dev connection BDE engine that used to go off on all their dev tools. So it's QA on that.
But-
No, this is before that.
Saying that the database is better than Access, that's putting the bar really low though.
Yeah, well, no, but you know, it's yeah, it's fun times.
Yeah.
But there's so much goodness just coming out on a daily basis, and there's so much that could be done, and the fact that it's just all the different things that people aren't aware of. So,
Yeah.
like you learned about the cost analysis at the resource group. You
Yeah.
know, you're good now.
I know.
Nothing about this subject. It just came out afterwards.
I'm happy and sad at the same time because I now see how much money we spent.
Well, and there's ways to fix that. So you can set budgets too at this too, right?
Yeah, I see that. Yeah, and I've set budgets. I mean, I've been playing with my Visual Studio account where I have like, I'm God, I can do everything. And I set up a resource group for every little experiment that I do. So I can see exactly, oh crap, I forgot to turn off that resource group. Just all of a sudden I use $20 of my $50 budget limit. So I set up some budget alerts that says like, hey, if I'm using more than $10 in a day, or if I hit this limit, then I'm getting an alert, and if I hit this limit, it automatically stops everything. So.
Yeah. And years ago, with Azure, I mean, Azure hasn't been around since AWS. I used to do that, but you could set budgets at the tenant level, right?
Yeah.
And that was it. If your whole tenant went over, but you know.
It would be much nicer to be a little bit more granular there.
Right. And that's
Yeah. Well, you know, Ron's company is huge. Medico is huge.
Well, Medico is
Tenant.
Yeah. If you incorporate everybody in North America,
Well, I mean, from a management perspective, it's not a tenant; it's a multi-tenant.
Yeah. It's set up as one tenant though, but yeah, I'm gonna play around with this. Guys, it's 8:30.
Yeah.
5:30
We have
for me.
to-
I'm
we-
West Coast.
We have to sign off.
Yeah.
Mike,
That's good stuff,
I
Mike.
think that you are now an official member of our group. If you actually stick around for the social part of it, which is what we do. You know, we're, you know, like just to put it into perspective, like as this has all been arranged, it's been just a webinar, but like we're a social group. We used to get together and eat pizza and go out for drinks, and I think that we have had a lack of people joining just because it's convenient to not join virtually. And
there's no pizza.
I think we're
so
what
I want to do is when you get back to meeting in wherever you were meeting, I want to come out to was it Virginia?
Yeah.
And have some pizza and stuff. I think I could probably spring that. Maybe Ron
Nah, we have
can buy
better
some stuff
food
from
out
us.
here. We have better food than pizza. If you were to come out here, if we could treat you as royalty.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah, there's
Southern royalty, but
royalty with
this is the whole point that we have these meetings, is to get around and talk about stuff. And you know, you're now our resident expert, but
Well,
you know,
I don't
it's
know about
good to-
expert. I just happen to dabble in everything, and I solve problems, and I figure ways out to do things. So maybe next time we could do something on Power BI and the new options on that, and then also
I would like
cost management. If I could do a mix up on that, or a little bit of both.
I would like that. I would like that.
Hey Tony, if you guys hammer out a little bit of like a blurb for next time, post it in NRV Dev, the Slack group. You guys have you have the access?
I'm not involved in that. I'll send it your way. You could forward it on.
Yeah, because there are a couple of people in the Roanoke user group who might be interested in Power BI as well, and they monitor that Slack channel. So we may pull some people from the Roanoke area. So,
But Mike, this has been very enlightening.
Yeah.
I'm really enjoying having you here every month. And
Next month
you
you can
know,
get Greg.
well, if Greg is the Power BI guy,
No, he's
so
not.
be
He's
it.
not.
That,
No, he's
that's
not.
that's good. That's good. But
He's not.
you know what I was kind of thinking about is that like this topic got picked because this is something you actively worked on this month, and it was fresh, and you did it. But because our group is not formal, if you feel like using our group as a sounding board for a new presentation, you know, like you want to run through and do a dry run before you present,
Well, you know,
we'll take
said
whatever
I got
info you can get.
I got two of them, Power BI and some of the new features on that, and some of the people you didn't know, things you didn't know besides just standard Power BI, and
Mhm.
because that's growing a lot, and there's a whole lot more available now, and it's a whole lot of options, and there's a whole lot of ways to save money on that, and then also the cost analysis stuff too, where you know, it's like Ron didn't know that was there, and it is, and a lot of people don't know. You know,
That could be two different subjects, but
yeah.
but yeah, if you have upcoming presentations to do, why not just use us as a sounding board to get to do your practice run
Well, that's what I
instead
use it
of
for
doing
this
it
time.
with yourself?
I've got 2 weeks on this Azure Lab.
Okay, perfect. I think that's great because we're an informal group and we get to have discussions. Part of that discussion could be, you know, what can I do differently? What kind of questions can you come up with? As we go through, maybe we interrupt you as we go along with the questions that you can refine your statement, and it gives you a benefit professionally of being able to refine your presentation. It provides us with the info we need,
And most of the
and
time, it's not a problem.
and then we can shoot the shit about it, and we can all learn. I learned so much. I'll tell you, I'm going to be busy for hours after this, just on what I've learned from tonight. To, you know, put your video in there. There's many ways to do that. I'm going to do that on my next team meeting. That's an issue for. I don't know how I'm going to do it. Maybe the same way as you, maybe a different way. But, you know, like this is the whole networking thing.
How did you do that? Did you use OBS or something?
No, I didn't. Well, I use OBS a lot, but I didn't do it for this one. In this one, I'll show you how I did it. So I start a Zoom meeting. It's connecting, and I'll start my video. And there's my other camera, so I got 2 cameras.
Yeah.
And then I share my screen, and I share the one the video is on. Click, and now I have it with my desktop, so I can move it around wherever I can size it.
This is so clever and so easy.
Right, so I can put it down here. I can put it right there. Then I can present, you know, what I got running here. So I got Outlook running, so I just bring it over to that desktop, and I can show them my different stuff. And that's it.
Or set your PowerPoint with a blank spot.
Yeah, so I just
like you did earlier.
Lead meeting.
That was super, super clever.
That's cool.
That's actually.
It's the easiest way.
That was actually the best thing I saw the whole time. Even though the whole topic was interesting, like I want to spend the rest of my week doing my next presentation that I have that.
With OBS, you could do fades. You could do other stuff, and you could stream the video in. And here's
I don't want to do any of that.
Here's another trick you might not know is OBS has a plugin where you can use the OBS camera as a feed for Teams.
I think I've seen that. And I've also
OBS virtual camera. So I've done that too.
I've seen it with stream chat as well, and somebody shows up and says like, "Your Honor, I'm really not a cat."
Right.
All right. I think I need to start playing with my new computer.
There you go. Hey, we sell those too if you need any, a whole bunch
No,
of them.
I just
know.
got.
Can hook you up with some really great ThinkStations.
It's unbelievable, man, because I have a beast sitting here, a Z800 HP.
We
The
got those
thing's
too.
chock full with hardware. And I got this one. It's the same size. Well, it's a mini tower. And I open it up because there's like foam in there. That's oh look, Tony is playing around with it.
I was just curious if anything would work that same way.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you got the camera.
But anyway,
Does that work?
Yeah.
It works.
But you got the interface though. So the thing with the zoom is it gives you just a kind of a box around it rather than the controls.
Yeah, I just threw this out there. This is
But I think if you hit the gear, you
worst.
can turn the controls off. Hit the gear in the top left to see if you can turn the controls off.
no, this is Microsoft.
No, go to the top. No, go to the top and select Pro Mode. Turn off Pro Mode. No, right there we are. Go back to the gear. Now, first option, turn off Pro Mode. Does that change it? No. I think there's a way to turn off those controls, and different controls are available on different cameras. So it depends on the. So
Yeah.
I've got a Logitech camera that has more controls than the Microsoft Teams camera that they sent me.
Oh yeah, you have to use the Logitech app for that,
So
which I do have.
yeah, a lot of different ways to do that.
Yeah. Anyway, it was just a proof of concept.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to use that.
But
Well,
what
I
I'm
wouldn't want to
saying-
use it because of it's not tight.
But what I was saying with the new computer, I opened it up and there was like foam in there to keep everything in place. And I take the foam out and there was nothing left in there. There's a video card in there. That's it. It's like they forgot all kinds of stuff. Oh no, what?
It's
There's
integrated.
the motherboard in the corner over there.
Yeah.
But where's the hard drive? Oh wait, that's on the other side of the board. It's like
No, it's FYI, I don't like to brag too much about Cynics, but we are historically the #1 HPE distributor.
oh yeah.
So in the US, Canada, I think in Mexico or South America too, we sell a whole lot of HP too. So I don't deal with that.
Yeah, no,
But those guys over in a different group, they like to talk about how they're #1 Cisco, #1 all this other stuff, and it's so I got access to all kinds of good stuff, but just in Azure and everything around Power Apps and Power Platform, including Power BI, and then Dynamics too. Got added to my chain, so I got to learn Dynamics. I'm keeping busy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that gives us more opportunities for presentations.
Yeah.
All right, Mike. I'm going to sign off. Thanks so
All right,
much for all the
Mike-
information. I look forward to the next one.
Mike and Ron, it has
Yeah,
been a pleasure seeing
Yeah.
both of you guys. I miss
Always.
you, Ron. I can't wait to hit some Mexican with you at some
I
point.
was very close to getting my first shot today. I got an email at 9:40 this morning, and I didn't see it until 11:30 that there was something going on, a clinic for shots in Roanoke, and everything was already taken up by the time I got there.
Wow.
So, but,
Soon.
yeah, soon.
And Mike, you're near Monterey, right?
No, I am in just south of SFO, San Francisco Airport. And I saw Ron's shirt, so I have to mention this.
Oh, I thought you were on the ocean side.
No, that the virtual background behind me is another house I just bought in Las Vegas.
Oh wow.
Oh,
So
it's,
I'll be going
it's
there
a
for
new,
a while soon.
new house.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if you
yeah,
actually
but-
can see the year on there as well. It's like one of the older T-shirts. that
Oh,
we have.
okay.
So.
Where in San Francisco are you?
I'm in a city called Foster City. It's just about 7 miles south of SFO. So right on the water. Actually, I've got the water's like. I used to have a boat, but I got angry at it. So I
On the
don't have it.
ocean side or the bay
well,
side?
It's on the bay side, but Foster City is built on a series of large and small canals. I'm on one of the big canals. So it's kind of nice. So now I'm going from this place to Vegas, which is, desert.
Yeah.
It has a pool. Our pool, we got 2 pools on this complex, and they've both been closed for the year now.
Yeah.
So it's like, I don't think it's going to open this summer. So I said, well, I'll get a place in Vegas with the pool, then we can go there. It's hot.
There you go.
Sip
Yeah,
our-
I never forget, we did a trip. The first time I was with the States, we went through all the southern states, and I flew back out of Frisco, San Francisco, sorry.
That's okay. Frisco's right.
There was also a Frisco somewhere, so that's why I was making sure.
There's a Frisco in Texas, yeah. But
Yeah. But
The sandwich.
we got out of Los Angeles. We stopped in Santa Barbara, and everything was beautiful. Everything was hot, 90-degree weather. I get to San Francisco, and it's reasonable. It's 75 degrees, but I'm standing. I have a picture of myself standing on the Fisherman's Wharf Pier with my coat on and whole bundled up, and still freezing my ass off
yeah.
at 75-degree weather.
This is one of the things is so many people that have not been to the Bay Area come out here at summertime. They think it's summertime,
Yeah.
and they think California, and they think LA, right? Hollywood and stuff. And then they come up here and they get out of the airport. They're like, oh my God, it's cold. And it's like that all day long. So everyone in San Francisco has usually 1 or 2 extra jackets in the back of their car because it changes, right? So it's sunny now. A little while ago it was cold and gray. It'll probably be
They
cold
have a
and gray.
name for that. Isn't it named Carl?
No, it's God, there is a name for it. I forget. I'm not from here originally. I'm from,
It's
Orange County.
Carl.
Carl.
It's Carl. I know because my wife is from San Francisco.
Oh, okay. I knew they had a name. I just don't know. I didn't ever.
Yeah, she used to live on Belvedere Street, which is like Hayden Ashbury.
Yeah.
And I am from
Close.
Sacramento.
Okay.
I was
Okay, yeah.
born in Sacramento.
Yeah, Sac Town.
So I know a little bit about that
Yeah. The cold.
side of the country.
All right, now I'm really going to sign off. Guys, it's been great.
All right. So.
Look forward to you next time. Take it easy.
Peace out. Bye.
Bye.